She had to clean chunks of human meat and blood from the ceiling and every surface in the kitchen. Ask Reddit on Reddit Rundown. What is the most stupid thing you've ever done? When I was 14, I was starting to get these pains in my stomach. After about a week they were crippling. I realized that I hadn't pooped in a while and that I was extremely constipated. I took over-the-counter laxatives but they didn't do anything. Eventually I go to the hospital and they're trying to figure out why I can't poop. I'm lying in the bed in excruciating pain and the doctor asks me to try and remember the last time I had pooped. I thought and then it dawned on me. The last time I had pooped was on February 14th, Valentine's Day. This turned out to be significant because it was on that day that my teacher had brought in a bunch of muffins for the class. Being a 14-year-old, one of my friends dared me to eat the muffin wrapper. Which I did. I told this story to the doctor. The doctor said it was probably obstructing my intestines. And they would try a water suppository to flush it out. I was a very smart kid but I remember my dad looking at me like I was a complete moron. Luckily the suppository worked and I had about 3 to 4 weeks of shit come out. Edit, by popular request, how big was the poop? When you get the suppository, they tell you to wait as long as you can so the water makes it as far up the intestinal tract as possible. I waited maybe 15 to 20 minutes before I couldn't handle the sensation anymore. I scurry over to the toilet they have waiting for me. I notice that it's quite tall and probably twice the volume of a normal toilet. I probably sat on that sucker for a good 30 minutes of near constant expulsion. Unfortunately, this is 2004 and I didn't have anything that could take pictures. But I seem to remember the toilet being about 1/3-half full. So, if you do the toilet math, that's like filling a civilian toilet. And yes, it was quite nice, minus all the sweating. I called the cops on myself because I thought I saw a ghost. Was working midnight shift at an old movie theater. After the last person left, I confused the shadow of my torso reflecting onto the empty movie screen for a disembodied ghost. I ran and told the manager, and because I had planted the ghost idea in his mind, he went in, saw his shadow and decided there was in fact a ghost, and called the cops. A cop arrived, we told him what we thought we saw, he rolled his eyes at us and went into the theater. But we had planted the idea in his mind already too, and he came out with his hand on his gun and a bit pale in the face. He called more cops. A second cop arrived, went into the theater, realized we had seen our own shadows, and came out laughing his ass off at all three of us. Manager and I were embarrassed, but that poor first cop. Eventually there were 10 cops there and some were laughing so hard at him, that they had to support themselves on the sides of their squad cars. Between bouts of laughter, one made a spooky ghost sound, and another mimed putting him in handcuffs as they both laughed even harder, and that made all the rest of them completely lose their shit laughing. When I was a kid I had really dry eyes for a time and I told my sister. Between us we decided that the best course of action was to smear a bunch of my mum's face cream into my eyes to try and stop the dryness. This, of course, went as well as you'd expect and my eyes immediately went red and swollen, and since I couldn't blink away the thick layer of cream straight away, I was convinced I was blind forever and went blundering out into the hallway crying and made it halfway down the stairs before I tripped and fell. I like to imagine my parents hearing the commotion and seeing one child rolling down the stairs screaming and crying with 2 giant lavender-scented blobs of cream for eyeballs and the other child staring in horror from the top of the stairs desperately trying to wipe the incriminating lotion off her hands. Paid $500 for bartending lesson/certification and haven't tended bar once in all my 29 years or even really tried. Somebody replied, yeah, bartending lessons, courses, or schools are a total scam, at least where I live. I've worked in bars for years and years, as a runner/bar back, bartender and manager, never met a single person who got a job based on one of those classes. It's almost like it is frowned upon, really. A real bartender just kind of stumbles into the profession and picks it up by actually working in a bar. Edit, this got more responses than anticipated. To be clear, I'm not shitting on anyone that have taken classes, but you can't really learn to work a bar from classes. It has to come from experience. And from what I can gather from my own talks with people that have gone through these kinds of courses, they mostly teach basic cocktails and basic techniques. If that is the goal, you should just buy Difford's Guide to Cocktails and save yourself a lot of money. It's the most complete book on the subject and will get you a long way. Really great website too. I always had the book lying around in my bars. With that on hand, you're set for everything anyone would ask from you. That said, getting into the business can be challenging. So, using a class to get an opening does work for some people without connections to the industry. Hit a golf ball onto a recently drained lake and decided it was playable from the mud. On my third step onto the lake, I sank up to my chest. Took a chain of 3 people to pull me out, and my God, the smell. Should have taken the penalty. I was 4 or 5 years old and my little brothers and I were jumping on our parents' water bed with Q-tips in our ears cause we thought it looked funny. I was jealous that my brothers both had Q-tips that were bent in silly shapes in their ears while mine were perfectly straight. I jumped off the top of the headrest and landed ear first on the bed in an attempt to bend my Q-tip more than theirs to assert dominance as the eldest brother. Q-tip pierced through my eardrum and went all the way inside my ear. Looking back, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing anything stupider than that in my whole life. I once tried to eat my phone while wearing a mask because I simultaneously forgot that I had the mask on and also forgot which hand was carrying my phone and which was carrying the cookie I was eating. Edit, I remembered another one. Was dreaming I was swishing some mouthwash around, then I woke up halfway, just enough to realize that I no longer had a sink in front of me but not enough to realize that I didn't actually have Listerine in my mouth. Figuring I couldn't just swallow mouthwash, I instead elected to spit into my blanket and wash it later. This was a conscious thought process, albeit one heavily muddled by sleep. I didn't do it, but I nearly jumped off a 30-meter drop without the safety cable attached to me. I think it was meant to be a bungee thing without bouncing back up. I was just so ready to get it over with. I didn't look before I leapt and the guy on the deck with me grabbed me when he saw I was ready to jump and yelled, "Holy hell, I haven't attached the cable yet." Nearly died over something so stupid. My excuse is that I was 14 at the time. Edit, wow, this blew up. My top comment is how I was a dumbass during my teen years. Great. A little background: I had my eyes shut the whole time I was up there. So, when he attached the harness and said all set, I thought that was my cue to go. Was baking bread and had a pyrex dish with water in the bottom of the oven for moisture. Checked the oven, water was gone. My dumbass decides I need to pour more water in. A split-second flash of what would happen goes through my brain, but I do it anyway. Cool tap water plus hot pyrex and boom. Shit explodes everywhere. I've been finding random bits of pyrex in my kitchen for years now. So, that. And heroin. We got drunk at some chick's house who I'd never met before. The place got pretty trashed, so when she went to bring a friend home she asked if we'd clean up a bit. I'm still pretty lit at this point and see all these half-full cups all over. The kitchen sink was full, so the best idea I could come up with was vacuum out the liquid and dump the cups. It makes the funniest gurgling, slurping sound I've ever heard, so I go about sucking up about 100 ounces of liquid into this vacuum. The chick comes home while I'm about 90% through all the glasses and stops dead. I turn around and look at the vacuum, which is one of those old ones with a fabric bag on it, and it's a deluge of jungle juice pouring into the carpet. I turn back to her, completely deadpan as the concept of what's happening is only now dawning on my alcohol-soaked brain, and say, "Your vacuum cleaner's drunk." She promptly kicked us out and I never saw the poor girl again. Moral of the story: don't let shitty 16-year-olds get drunk at your house. Drunkenly ate 2 Carolina Reapers, buddy's dad grows peppers. Next thing I know I'm over the toilet puking up what felt like lava. Somebody replied, "My brother once ate a whole habanero pepper. He said it was so hot that he was farting sparks." Had a friend move in with me and my girlfriend because his depression was worsening due to living with his mom at 26. Gradually began badmouthing me in front of and behind my back to my girlfriend. This evolved into her going to him with things she didn't like or agree with in our relationship. This ended up leaving me virtually homeless to be with him when she kicked me out during Christmas/New Year's holiday. A couple of years ago, the 4th of July was a few days away, so all of the stores had decorations and clothes with stars or red, white, and blue. In a busy clothing store, I, with no hesitation, picked up a shirt with a blue star on it, and across the clothing section I asked my mom, "Mom, when is the 4th of July?" You can imagine how embarrassing that was when everyone turned and looked at me. I can only think of what was going through their minds. Brought a BB gun to school to trade with my friend for his PlayStation. Sadly though, The BB gun looked like a real gun and was just after Columbine, and I went to school in Colorado. A student saw it and reported it, and shit hit the fan pretty damn hard for me in 5th grade. Got expelled for it and made the local newspaper. Somebody replied, I did the same thing here in the UK. Bought a BB gun from a mate and used it to shoot someone in the head at lunchtime in front of about 10 people. That it was so out of character for me, and because my mum taught at the school, I got off with a 2-week suspension. Mum was obviously mortified. The head leaned on me hard for the name of the guy who sold it to me, and I stayed quiet. He'd sold a few, was a bit of an entrepreneur. He warned me not to get it out in school. I still can't believe I did it. I was anticipating having sex for the first time and decided to completely shave my entire area down there, and when the girl saw my junk she laughed and said, I like men, not children, and walked away. I walked across a working train trestle. It was like 100 feet into a rocky gulch either side. 100% chance of death if a train came. Also, when I was little, I decided I wanted to throw a pair of shoes up onto some telephone wires. So, I went in my mom's closet to find some shoes. For some reason I thought she'd be less likely to notice if I didn't take a complete pair, so I tied 2 random shoes together with the laces from a different shoe. Then threw them on the telephone wire in front of my house. When I was in college, about 19 to 20 years old, my friend and I, both female, both super drunk, were standing outside a gas station at about 2 a.m., waiting for someone of age to come along and buy us beer. Eventually a few slightly older guys that we'd never seen before came by and said they had beer back at their place and would we like to go hang out with them? We thought that was an A+ idea. They then said the best way to get to their place was a shortcut through the woods behind the gas station. After zero thought whatsoever, we said, lead the way. Remember, this was in the middle of the night and we're piss drunk. This was also pre-cell phones. So, off we go into the woods with these strange men. There's not much more to the story other than we made it out of there a few hours later without getting Law and Order SVU ed. And interestingly, both my friend and I actually went on to date 2 of the guys for a while. But seriously, people, don't follow strange men into the woods in the middle of the night. Hiding in a basement with my cousins at their house, burning styrofoam with a lighter we stole. Decided to pour a cup or so of gasoline on it. It inevitably exploded onto us all. We all ran out of the basement while on fire, went out pretty quickly / only burned the clothes, and ran straight to the grown-ups upstairs. Luckily, they stopped the fire from spreading in the basement, and unluckily we got the ass whooping of a lifetime. I'm so accustomed to wearing my mask now, that when I coughed up some phlegm from the chest and went to spit, I forgot I was wearing one and it went all over my mouth, nose, and chin. Started laughing hysterically covered in my own spit. Probably looked like a psychopath. Filled up a spent CO2 cartridge with gunpowder, stuck a fuse in, lit it, then stood there holding it in a vice grip till it went off. I was lucky I didn't put enough gunpowder in it for it to fragment when it blew up. The next time, I made sure I did put in enough gunpowder, but I ran and hid after lighting it. Later on, I learned that's what is called a pipe bomb. Somebody replied, I have a friend who used to do that. He and another friend decided to skip school for the day and turn CO2 cartridges into mini pipe bombs. He filled up a cartridge with gunpowder and inserted a model rocket igniter into the hole. This is where it gets really dumb. Generally, he used a 9-volt battery connected using about 50 feet of wire as the ignition source. It worked, but the resistance of the wire delayed ignition by several seconds as the igniter had to heat up. He decided there was a better way. This time he used very short sections of wire and made a rudimentary switch using a piece of paper and 2 wires. When the wire is pulled out, the contacts touch and kaboom. For whatever reason, he attached the battery while in his kitchen and picked the device up to carry it outside. While he was carrying it, the paper slipped and the device went off. By some miracle he actually survived, but lost part of a middle finger and had shrapnel injuries to both hands, arms, face, including eyes, chest, and groin. My other friend was not injured but was covered in blood and human tissue. He rushed his injured buddy to the hospital and in the process nearly ruined his car's interior. The bomb squad ended up arriving and confiscating the rest of the powder-filled cartridges along with the other supplies. Charges were considered, but not pursued due to his injuries. His mom got the worst of it all. Not only was her 17-year-old injured and, in the hospital, But she also had to clean chunks of meat and blood from the ceiling and every surface in the kitchen. To this day we call him Nubs. Went on a 20+ kilometer hike in 45 degrees Celsius weather in Arizona in August by myself on 2 hours of sleep. Thank God I had lots of water. I got lost but thankfully after 2 hours found my way out. I have been sleeping for 4 hours max the last 4 days, and the day before the hike I slept 2 hours. Dumbest thing I have done so far. Threw a house party for my 17th birthday. Not too stupid in theory, but my parents were only out of the house for about 3 hours and I knew in advance that was the time frame we had. Figured I could get everyone to leave before the adults returned home. I was wrong. Picture the scene of my parents walking through the front door. After a prayer group. My best friend sat in our empty bath being sick all over herself. Another friend having chocolate sauce licked off her chest. Someone dressed as Hugh Hefner hiding tea bags in random places around the house for my poor mom to find. I won't go into too much detail about where I was, but I wasn't exactly fully clothed at the time. They grounded me for such a long time. First and last time I ever rebelled. Thanks for listening to Reddit Rundown. Give a thumbs up and subscribe, and help me get to 1,000 subs. Leave a comment below on what kind of topics or stories you would like to hear. You can also check out other videos on my channel. Thanks and have an awesome day.